Let's begin the session with an invocation to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chokok Sri, Lord Mahaguruji Mailing, to all the spiritual teachers, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to the angels of love and wisdom, to the angels of theosophy, to the holy masters, to the great white brotherhood. We invoke for your blessings of divine light, divine love, divine power, divine healing, divine guidance, divine protection, the blessings of abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. Thank you for giving us this chance to gather together as a group, to learn, to understand, and to use this information to grow as a person and as a soul, that we may use this information and knowledge to help our family, our friends, our loved ones, and for alleviating the sufferings of humanity. We thank you in full faith. Right. Welcome, everyone, to today's session on Masters and the Path. In the presentation, I've put on the screen, this was shared in the WhatsApp group also, that according to theosophy, there are 10 initiations, okay? The first one is where we are into the path of the spiritual life, the birth of spiritual life, and you go on and on and on until we get to, of course, the planetary logos. Now here, we are somewhere here in the second and third stage where we have more control over our emotions, some control over our thoughts, and we're trying to get to the place of becoming an Arhat or achieving oneness with our higher soul. So keeping this in mind, we're going to start with the second and third initiations, which is control over the astral mental bodies. Okay. So the person who has passed the first initiation, they have entered upon the spiritual path properly. Okay, the path proper. This is the path that leads them to adeptship, to the path that takes them outside of the ordinary human kingdom, from the regular problems that we have, the normal stuff day-to-day life, and onto the superhuman side of things. When it says Superman, it doesn't mean putting on some bright red cloaks and undies and flying about, although that probably does happen in the inner world. Now, if you are flying on the spiritual world, you will be looking at the progress and the plans of everything that is happening in the world below. And one of the powers, one of the abilities that we get when we are initiated in such a way is that we don't get tired. Okay, so a regular person might wonder that if they're working day and literally working at night also, how come they don't get tired? Well, it's because when you're in the inner world, when you're functioning at that higher level, your physical body is at rest, while your energy bodies, your astral and mental bodies, they are getting really, really, really charged up with the nobility, the scope of the work that's to be done. There's an inner inspiration which makes us work tirelessly. Okay, so a regular person will not be able to understand this because they're consumed with regular day-to-day affairs. They just understand, wake up, eat, work, return, sleep, repeat. But a person who's already initiated, who's gone through the spiritual progress, they have, according to the book, they have drunk at the fount of life. And his strength is the strength of 10 because the heart is pure, and the glory of the ideal of humanity, which they see with ever increasing clearness, tremendous clarity, because they have an attraction, inspiration to do, to serve, to be better. And that is nothing that you can be swayed by regular material things. So they are divinely inspired, divinely working. Okay. Now, according to the texts, they have three big shortcomings, three big issues which they need to get rid of. Okay, so the Sanskrit terms, I'm not reading them out because I'll make a hash of the pronunciation, but the first one is the delusion of self. The second one is doubt or uncertainty, and the third one is superstition. So these are known as the first three fetters. The first three fetters. The first of these, the delusion of self, is the I am consciousness. Because when they are connected with the personality, it's just an illusion. It is not the reality of what is actually happening. When they are consumed with the fact that, okay, I am the personality, all of this stuff which is happening is, the physical world is what really matters. This is a self-delusion. That has to be completely removed. So when we start our invocations, different speakers obviously have different styles of invoking, but the essence of it remains the same, that I am not the body, that I'm not the body, I am not the emotions, I'm not the thoughts, and I'm not even the mind. So if I'm not any of this, then what am I? I am the soul. So one of the prerequisites, one of the first things that we need to get rid of once we're on this path, about to get initiated higher and higher, is to remove the illusion of the body, of the emotions, of the thoughts, and of the mind. So I'm not the body, not the emotions, not the thoughts, not even the mind. Okay, the body is just the vehicle. The emotions and the thoughts are the products, and the mind is just an instrument. In essence, I am the soul, a spiritual being of divine light, divine love, divine power, divine intelligence, divine compassion, divine willpower, and I'm connected to my higher soul because that's my journey upwards. That is the first illusion which must be gotten rid of. Should I really try and pronounce this? Sakyaditi, okay? The delusion of self. The next one, vichiksha, which is doubt or uncertainty. Now, it's true that doubt is a hindrance to spiritual progress, but the antidote to doubt, the solution to doubt, is not blind faith. The solution to doubt is discrimination. You must have a clear mind, a questioning mind, a discriminating mind to ask, what is this? How does it work? Instead of saying, doubtful, say that, does this really work? Am I really sure that there are higher beings out there? What if it's just a fantasy? What if someone just wrote a work of fiction? It doesn't make it any real. But then we can take that attitude aside and instead say, okay, how is this real? How does it work? Have other people have these experiences? How do we know that this is not some sort of a mass delusion? So then we go and see that over the years, over hundreds and thousands of years, different civilizations, different wise people have come up, and there's a commonality in their teachings. So then we say, okay, if everyone in the past, or many people in the past, people with a certain intellectual style of development, with certain qualities, if they said all these things, we may accept this to be a temporary form of truth. Why temporary form of truth? Because we haven't personally validated it. It's only when we personally validate, it's only when we actually sit down or experience these things on our own that we can say, okay, yeah, you know what, this thing works. Now, if you look at it from a grosser, more practical example, it seems fanciful, it seems outrageous to claim that someone can move their hands in thin air and remove someone's headache, or they can work on some dreaded disease like, say, Alzheimer's or cancer or something like that. Or someone is having difficulty due to breathing, due to COVID, and then there are a group of people who are doing hand movements and blessings and stuff, and they're through healing, they're getting better. And it's only when we actually practice it, when we actually see that, yes, I am moving my hands, I am following the steps, and the person is actually getting physically better. So then we say, okay, this thing actually does work. And we can say it works, we can say it with conviction and with feeling, because we have experimented, because we felt and seen and experienced the results. So likewise, whether there are higher masters, there are holy masters, whether there's a spiritual path, whether there are actually initiations and stuff, is something which we can validate for ourselves through our experiences and practices. Now, it's no doubt that, say, the first initiation, which is supposed to be the control over the physical body and the physical vehicles, an infant, a child, is unable to even hold its head up straight. It's unable to form words. But over time, it gains an autonomous control over its physical body. If you work out, if you train yourself, you do hatha yoga or tai chi or martial arts or gymnastics or something, you will find that as you train your physical body more, you are able to accomplish feats of strength, endurance, which other people, ordinary people, cannot. So it's because you've put yourself through that training, through that discipline, through that practice, that you've reached a standard which most ordinary people cannot reach up to. Okay. So we understand that through training, things happen. So that's the first initiation as an example. Then we can say that as we do things like character building, as we do things like practicing the virtues, loving kindness, generosity, and all of that, we find a difference in our character. So you may use yourself, your own life as an example. Compare how you are right now as a person, emotionally, just take emotions as an example, and how you were as a person 5 years back or 10 years back. If something upset you, how was your emotional reaction? And if that same thing happens to you right now, something disastrous, something terrible, I hope it doesn't, but if something does, how do you react? If there's a tragedy, you've lost someone, how do you process those things? Your behavior, the maturity, the calmness, the way in which you handle yourself in a situation of anxiety, stress, and calamity is an indication of your growth as a human being, as a person, as a soul. Likewise, there's a mental aspect and so on and so forth. So we can say from the basic practical examples alone that we should not doubt the process. We know that the process is there. How effective the process is, how does it work, how can I make it more effective for myself, is that discriminatory thought process, which is so desirous of a disciple. So number one, the disciple should not have the delusion of self. And number two, they should not have any doubt or any uncertainty, which brings us to number three, they should not have any superstition. Now, superstition has been described as including all sorts of unreasonable and illogical belief systems. Okay, there are people, I remember this, there'll be a cricket match between, say, two countries, okay, say Australia and New Zealand. They have a cricket match going on, and we're supporting Australia. And we find that one particular bowler bowled the batsman out. And we're like, oh, he bowled the batsman out when I was sitting in this position. So all through the rest of the match, we'll be sitting in this uncomfortable, bizarre position in the hopes, in the belief that my sitting in this position some 7,000 miles away has influenced an athlete's ability to bowl a batsman out. And you got all these weird little rituals and other things that people, like men, for example, we have a ritual. Every time we go out of the house, we do this tap of our pockets, cell phone, keys, wallet, watch, etc. We all have little rituals. Sometimes we will pray before an important meeting, a specific kind of prayer to a specific kind of superpowered being. Or we'll wear our lucky shirt or lucky tie or something. We all have these lucky colors and lucky numbers and all these things. These are, in effect, as the book says, superstitious beliefs. These are dependence upon outward rites and outward ceremonies, which don't really have a huge bearing. It gives us a sense of comfort. It gives us a sense of confidence. And in that sense, it works because we feel that confidence, we're able to handle the situation. But by itself, does it really work? Does it have that kind of an effect? Remains to be seen. Now, so maybe it does actually work. But a person who's on the spiritual path, he will see these things precisely as what they are, as things and objects which help us. So we'll take that only to help us and then move on from there. Not more, not any less. So if a certain type of prayer helps you, great. If a talisman helps you, great. If your lucky silk shirt helps you even some more, why not? But they are effectively just instruments. So those three things: one, you shouldn't be worried so much. You shouldn't be thinking about your body. Two, you should not have any doubt. And three, no superstitions, which then takes you into the path. And every stage of the path proper is divided into 4 steps. Step number 1 is the margo, the magya, or the way. This is the way. This is the way. During which the student is striving to cast off the fetters. What fetters? The ones we described right now, 3 fetters. The second stage is the phal, or the path, or the fruit, the fruit or the result. So you're on the path, and then you get the result. What is the result? Is when the disciple finds the result of his efforts showing themselves more and more. You don't get the results overnight, but you see the results over a period of time. The third stage is the bhavagya, or the consummation. This is the period when the result has culminated. You're able to fulfill satisfactorily all the work, all the conditions on which you have brought yourself. You think of it, if I had to give a very physical example, say the goal, say the path is the path of physical fitness. So you're on the path. What is being on the path? You try to get rid of your 3 things. You try to get rid of the fact that you're overeating. You try to get rid of your overwork. You try to get rid of your lack of sleep. So you actively work upon yourself and start exercising. Then you get the fruits. You start noticing that your clothes fit a little bit better. Other people around you are taking some notice. So you are now on the second stage, or the phal stage, where you are able to start seeing the results of your efforts. The third one, the consummation of it, the bhavagya, is when you have actually lost all the weight that you wanted to lose. You look amazing, you feel good, and you are now able to go on to the next stage, we've not just lost that weight, but you're now in a position to start teaching people how to lose weight, which is stage number 4, the Gotrabhu. This means that the time has arrived when you are in a position to move on to the next stage, the next initiation. So if you really look at the way our lives are, the physical world is, it is a mirror, it's a microcosm of the larger picture, the larger macrocosm, which is actually taking place, which is actually unfolding. Here, we are struggling with just the physical. But on the spiritual, we say, okay, we are no longer the physical, no longer the emotional or anything. We're on the spiritual path. And on that spiritual path, we are now starting to get our results. Now that we're getting the results, we are able to reach our destination. And once we've reached the destination of that purification, of that character building, we are now ready for the next stage, the next initiation, which is the Gotrabhu stage. Now, it is very important when you're going into the next stage, the disciple, the candidate should have the ability to fully, completely, freely function in their mental body. Because even though when you're initiated in the first initiation, it happens in the astral plane, the further initiations happen in the lower mental plane. So quick recap of the various planes. We've got the Adi, the Anupadaka, and everything else. If you go back to our previous studies, can't go into it in too much detail. But physical level, etheric level, lower astral, lower mental, lower astral, higher astral, lower mental, higher mental, and then Buddhic, Nirvanic, and so forth. So we are moving forward and we are going upwards and upwards and upwards. So the first initiation happens in the astral plane. The next one goes straight up into the mental plane, the lower mental plane. So the ability to really utilize the mental body to function freely using thought, the power of thought alone, communicating using entire ideas without any usage of any words or any other written material or anything else, the ability to take entire thoughts and project and to receive thoughts and to work upon those thoughts and produce results. All of those qualities, we should be able to function freely with it in the mental plane. And once we've reached that stage, once we're able to really use our mental body and move forward, that is when we will have reached the stage for the third initiation. Now, sometimes the initiations, they take place in a hall or in a garden. This is just a descriptive passage of the thing that it's just for how the ceremony happens, because some people, they really like the ceremony. Other people are content with just doing the work quietly behind the scenes. Some people are fond of or getting that acknowledgement, that certification, that recognition. So sometimes if Lord Maitreya is the initiator bringing them in, then the ceremony is usually performed in his garden or in a great room. He's present in his physical body, and in some cases, the Lord Vaivasvata Manu, who lives close by, is also present. All others are usually present in their astral bodies in case of the first initiation, but in the mental body in case of the second initiation. The reason why I'm talking about this, why I thought this was relevant to share, is because the Vesak is coming up. It's just, I think, 2 or 3 weeks away. Okay. And because Vesak is coming up, huge amounts of spiritual energy will become abundantly present for our utilization. In the Vesak festival, Lord Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, he appears, and for a full, I think, 8 minutes, he radiates his energy, spiritual energy, so much energy that it can take us, carry our work forward for the next 12 months. So you could say that meditating during the time of Vesak is the equivalent of having several months worth of spiritual energy stuffed in your system, stuffed in our systems. When that happens, it happens in the Vesak Valley, somewhere in Tibet. All right, we'll talk more about it. We'll share more information about it on our social media. But effectively what happens is, Lord Buddha comes, the other great beings from the White Brotherhood, they're also there. They receive his energy, and then they share that energy. They spread that energy out throughout the disciples in attendance. If we are able to function in our astral mental bodies, we'll be able to go closer and closer to where the action actually is taking place. It's one thing being in the physical body, meditating at if suppose the peak of Vesak is, say, 11 o'clock, but we go late, we say, okay, we'll come at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or something of the sort. We lose out on the peak of that energy which is being shared. Sure, we still benefit because we're meditating on the particular day, the energy is there, but that tremendous downpour, that huge focused hose of energy we miss out on. So it's in our best interest to use this information to actually, before we go to sleep at night, we send out a prayer that to our higher soul, to our teacher, to our spiritual teacher, and say, with the help of our spiritual teacher, we invoke that we are able to function in our astral body and to be of service in the inner world. And then another day, you can invoke, with the help of my spiritual teacher, with the help of God, I invoke that I am able to go and attend classes or workshops in the inner world, in the mental world. And then you'll have more vivid dreams, more vivid recollections of all the stuff that is happening. And then perhaps, if your energy is getting equally updated, upgraded, and you're able to function more and more, you will be able to remember more things. I'll share an experience with you. This was well over a decade ago. And my mentor, whom I keep referencing in many stories, I'm very fortunate that way. One evening, I showed up to her center for meditation. And after the meditation was done, she looks at me and says, have you started preparing for the presentation? And I'm like, yeah, sure. What presentation? And she was like, I gave you instructions today morning about a certain book which you need to read and need to start preparing from. I looked at her and said, I checked my phone. I'm like, I didn't get any messages from you. I checked my email. I checked my WhatsApp. I checked my text messages. I was like, I don't have any messages from you. She says, I didn't send you a physical message. It was in the inner world. You were there in the inner world. I was like, okay, what are you talking about? Several months later, she was not available. And I was required by the foundation, the local foundation, to make a presentation. And they suggested a particular book. And it's that moment when they said that I have to prepare this particular book that I realized the book has at least 400 pages worth of reading material and complicated reading material. So it's not something I'd be able to finish in a week's time. It would have taken approximately 6 months to properly assimilate, understand, and then present it. And it was 6 months ago or more that she had given me, my mentor had given me that instruction. And I remembered with complete clarity, oh yeah, this is what she told me to do. And that's what I need to study and what I need to prepare. And because that memory came flooding back, I was able to actually have the presentation ready in a week's time. So, when you're on the spiritual path, those 3 things which you need to remove, doubt being one of them, that's the thing. When you're on the margya, when you're on the maggo, and you start to get the phal or the fruit, and then it gets to the consummation of it, you realize that, yeah, what stuff is actually there. Telepathy happens. You can take entire mental messages and share it with them. So sometimes when we are making these talks, when we do our Tuesday talks and things, a lot of the information comes, or some of the information comes as we're just discussing what we're going to talk about. And then we're actually delivering the talk, some anecdote, some story, some experiment just comes in, and we're able to deliver something which adds value to the lives of the people who have shown up. So all of these amazing things are possible when we really refine ourselves, when we get rid of many of the obstacles, many of the blockages which hold us back, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. So removal of doubt is super, super critical. Having a clean, clear, sharp, discriminating mind, very, very essential. Okay. So in this particular initiation, as our bodies grow, when I say body is growing, I don't mean the physical body, that would be unpleasant. When our emotional and mental bodies, as they grow in function, in their strength, in their spiritual musculature, as it were, we are able to get more stuff done. And we're able to get more spiritual energy too. So when we're on the path, it's like we are moving upwards on an escalator, which is also going up. So our growth, our speed is accelerated many, many, many times. So when these initiations happen, according to this text that you're seeing on the screen, the great ones, they focus their consciousness on whatever level of initiation is required. But there is, of course, on the astral and mental planes, a perfect counterpart of everything on the physical. And so the accounts given are perfectly correct. And so anything that takes place in the physical world is represented in the energy world, and stuff that is happening in the energy world does play an impact on the physical world. So first initiation, physical body. Second initiation, the emotional body. The second initiation very rapidly continues the development of the mental body. And at or near this point, the student learns to use the body of illusion, literally the Mayavi Rupa. Maya meaning illusion. They're able to create and use a body for their purposes. Now, this is a temporary body. It is an astral body made by someone who's able to function in their mental body. So when a person, let me repeat that once more. The Mayavi Rupa, or the body of illusion, is a temporary astral vehicle. This vehicle can be manufactured and driven by a person who can already function in his mental body. What are the benefits of it? What is the utilization of this? We'll come to that. Because you see, when a person travels in the astral plane, they usually do so in the astral body. But if it was necessary for them to make themselves visible on the physical plane while he was functioning in his astral body, he would have to create a physical body. So here you are floating about in the astral body, and then someone in the physical level, suppose they're caught in an accident and you need to help. So then your consciousness goes down, and emotionally you're there and all supportive. Hey, I'm here to help you. But physically, you can't pull them out of the situation. So then you need to utilize matter and energy and create a physical body around you. More information on that in the book Invisible Helpers, right? And Man Visible and Invisible as well. Now, likewise, if a person was working in their mental body and needed to do some work on the emotional level, on the astral level, he would need to materialize a temporary astral body, which is known as the Mayavi Rupa, okay, or the body of illusion. And when he'd finished his work, he would withdraw back to the mental plane once more, and the temporary body would vanish, and the materials of the body would just return back to the astral plane itself. So sometimes we have, say there's this amazing book called Autobiography of a Yogi. Someone had asked me about this some time ago. In this book, Autobiography of a Yogi, sorry, I'm just jumping books to try and make this as holistic as possible. Forgive me for that. In this book, Autobiography of a Yogi, there is a particular example of one of the disciples. He was looking for some clarity, for some guidance, and his spiritual teacher, his guru, materialized in front of him and gave him a verbal instruction. And then when he looked again, the teacher had vanished. So if we take this information, what we have on our screen, if we take this information and apply it to what that student, what that disciple saw, what had happened was the consciousness of the guru is functioning, say, at the mental plane, at the mental level, right? And the disciple, he is very worried, he's tensed and stressed out. And so his emotional body, his astral body is all confused. It's all messed up. The guru, in his love, in his devotion for his student, because remember, the guru creates the energy form of the student and always is in touch with it, energetic connection with it. So the guru can sense it, can see it. And so the guru sends a message to the astral body of the student. But then the student is so emotionally agitated that they cannot receive the message, let alone acknowledge it. They don't even tune to it, okay? So then what the guru can do is, he can send his energy, which is there on the mental plane, he can create a body around himself in the astral plane, and then make it heavier still, and send that astral body onto the physical plane, where he can use physical matter to create a physical form, not a physical body, a physical form that looks like him, that sounds like him. And the student can then get his physical voice and respond to it. And the moment the message is delivered, the body dematerializes. So it's pretty interesting when you think about it, that how can a person be in two places at once? In fact, one of the accomplishments of an ordinary saint is supposed to be bilocation. They're able to be present in two locations, two or more locations simultaneously. So my theory is, what happens is that they're able to send their consciousness from where they are to another place, and then they can create, using these techniques, this technology, a physical, an astral, mental body in that location, which can do their functioning. So when the work is done, they just withdraw their consciousness, withdraw the energy, and the atoms, molecules of that plane just disperse. Fascinating stuff, isn't it? Now, In the time of the first initiation, okay, by the way, because a person, let's just go rewind a little bit, because such a person is able to use their consciousness at all levels, typically these people tend to be able to work very, very, very long hours without much rest. It's not just overwork, they're literally able to accomplish many, many, many more things in a short span of time because they are emotionally and mentally functioning simultaneously. So they may be doing their office work at one time and with full concentration on it, but their mind is so powerful, their mental body is so strong that they're able to think of what should they read, what should they study, what should they teach, what other things they need to do. And so when their body physically falls asleep, they're able to function in the higher mental, in the higher astral. And the next day, because they've worked all night energetically, they're able to simply produce physical results rapidly. So you may know people, you may be inspired by people who are able to produce a huge amount of work. They have n number of hobbies, n number of activities, multiple businesses. Like, say, for example, our teacher, Master Cho Kuk Sui. He was a businessman. He had multiple businesses. He was an author. He was a chemical engineer. He was a spiritual teacher. He traveled a lot, and he maintained a family. So he's able to accomplish so many things. Why? Because his energy literally was spread in full control in the astral, in the mental planes, and he's able to function multiple levels. In fact, you may have noticed this about yourself also, that if you've meditated for a certain amount of time, as you've practiced your spiritual practices for an amount of time, you become a little more productive. You're able to accomplish more things. Why? Because you're able to utilize all your bodies, all your consciousness, even when your physical body is asleep. And so the crux of the matter here is that up to the time, as you can see on the screen, up to the time of the first initiation, the man works at night in his astral body. But as soon as it is perfectly under control and he's able to use it fully, that's when he starts to work, he begins to work in the mental body. And when the mental body is also completely organized, it is a far more powerful instrument, is a far more flexible vehicle than the astral body itself. And therefore, many of the activities which are not possible on the astral body become easy to accomplish in the mental plane. So with the power to form the Mayavi Rupa, the body of illusions, this particular person is able to instantly pass from the mental plane to the astral plane, and at the same time retain the resources, the faculties, the keenness of the mental plane. And he can only become visible in the astral plane when he needs to do that work astrally. So can you imagine that at any point in time, we would be able to, as we practice, as we progress, able to function physically, emotionally, and mentally completely. And when we have an emotional situation in front of us, we don't react emotionally, but instead our mind, our mental body comes in and does the work. And when the work is done, consciousness goes back where it needs to. In order to learn how to do this, the master, the holy master, will teach the student how to make this happen. Initially, it's a little difficult, but later on, with some practice, they can do it themselves. Okay. The period after taking the second initiation is the most dangerous part of the path. Why? Because at this point, they've gone up, there's a possibility of falling back down and spend many, many incarnations just wandering about aimlessly, unguided, befooled. Because at this stage, if there is any weakness in the character, not the personality, but the character, the purification, that's when these weaknesses will show up. Now, in theory, it should be impossible for a person who's risen to this height, it should be impossible for them to fall back down. But unfortunately, there have been so many stories, so many bitter and sad experiences, it has shown that this does happen. Because in almost all the cases, the danger comes from pride. A great spiritual fall due to pride. Because if there's even a little bit of pride in the person's system, there is a huge risk for falling down. Now, what we talk here in terms of intellect, in terms of intelligence, is a small fraction of what true intelligence, true realization actually is. But some people, they become so proud of that, so proud of their intelligence, so proud of their wisdom, that this causes them to have a huge spiritual downfall. So when a person gets even a remote glimpse of what his intellect is likely to be in the future, there is tremendous danger, because then they become very proud of how much they know, what they know. And once the person is on that path of, look at me, I know so much, I do so much, there will be failure. And as Master Chokosi puts it, the reward, the reward for pride is failure. And so nothing except unceasing awareness. He must be constantly vigilant, constantly aware of his own character. Use his Ajna Chakra, be very sharp, be very clear, do a lot of inner reflection, do a lot of firm resolutions, and develop themselves to remove any trace of pride, any trace of selfishness, any trace of prejudice. Now, this said, I must also bring back a prior reference. All of this might look like it's very serious and very strict. It is. It is serious, it is strict, because we're already on the spiritual path. Things are not meant to be so easy this time, because we're actively trying to improve ourselves. Physical example, when you go to the gym and you start lifting weights, if you just lift a very lightweight 1 kilo or 2 kilos over and over again, nothing much is going to happen. But when you progress to the heavier weights, that's when you start to feel the pain, you feel the burn. But that's when the actual work is happening, when you are undergoing that no pain, no gain kind of situation. Likewise, in the spiritual world. See, our spiritual teacher loves us. Our higher soul loves us and cares for us. This statement is very, 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 very true for regular people. When we are made a commitment to be on the spiritual path, that's when the discipline starts coming in. For regular, ordinary people, come, help, heal, enjoy, have fun, have a good life. But serious people will have serious responsibilities. I think it was the great master Spider-Man who said, with great power comes great responsibility. Although don't quote me on that. Now, the danger point, the shortcoming, the issues in the life of the initiate is indicated in the story in the gospel by Master Jesus Christ's temptation. So what happened was he wandered about in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. The spiritual significance of this, I'm just going to read this out, okay? The 40 days in the wilderness symbolizes the period during which the growth and expansion of the mental body, which was given in the second initiation, is being worked down into the physical brain. For the ordinary candidate, for the ordinary person, not 40 days, but 40 years might be required. It was the life of Jesus when his brain was being adapted for downloading the Christ consciousness. He did not become Jesus Christ. He was not born Jesus Christ. He was Master Jesus, the Christ, because his consciousness expanded to take in the Christ consciousness. And so the devil in this symbolism represents the lower nature, okay? Physical things, material desires. Then the devil, who in the symbolism represents the lower nature, comes to tempt the initiate, first to use his power for the satisfaction of his own needs. Like, hey, you are a spiritual person, you're so evolved and all of this. Why are you suffering? Why are you undergoing all these problems? Come on, make your own life easier for you. So the first thing is that if thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made into bread. That's the first temptation. The next one is he will have to go up to the top of the temple and then perform a miracle. And this miracle would cause other people to really look at him and say, oh, wow, amazing. You are such a great person, such an evolved person. So the desire to show off. And we have this, right? And lastly, the devil shows him all the glory, all the material things, all the amazing things, the powerful world, the glory, and says, all these things I will give to you if you will worship me. And he's tempted to use his powers to make that happen, to go for it, but then he doesn't. Which is where he is able to pass through all the various temptations and say, okay, I will not give in to whatever is the the temptations of the physical world, of the lower world. So then he passes through the 4 sub-stages of the second initiation, and then he becomes what is known as the Gotrabhu. He is now ready for the third initiation, to become a person which is known as the anagamin, which literally means someone who does not return. Does not return from where? Because they've gone through the spiritual path. If you follow the labors of Hercules, the 12 labors of Hercules, which we covered many, many, many months ago, this is part of that journey, the journey into becoming an Arhat, and you don't need to come back into the problems and issues of the physical world. Okay, the anagamin, because it is expected that once he's gone through the third initiation, he will then, when he takes birth again, he will already carry forward from the third initiation onwards. The Hindu name for this stage is the Hamsa, which basically means a swan, but the word is also considered to be a formation of the sentence Soham, Hamsa Soham, which means I am that, or that am I. This is very, very deep, very spiritual. I would recommend that you study the book Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul by Master Choa Sui for a simplification and a much, much easier way of understanding this complicated topic. Because if I start explaining it, number one, it's not going to be as interesting, and two, it's going to go on for very, very long. So in the interest of time, I recommend you read Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul by Master Choa Sui. Okay. Now, according to the Hindu tradition, there's a tradition that the swan is able to separate milk from water. Don't ask me more details about it. It's very interesting stuff if you Google it. But basically what it means is that when a person is spiritually evolved, when they're at a certain level of spiritual development, they can look at a situation and they can understand this is the truth and this is not. This is real and this is an illusion. This is good. This is not yet good. And they're able to separate reality from actuality. And therefore, they do not undergo any suffering in life. Okay. Now, this initiation, this stage of becoming a Hamsa, is typified in the life of Christ by the transfiguration. If you remember the story of transfiguration, he went on to a high mountain where he was transfigured. There's a tremendous beam of light and his face shone. So according to one of the recollections, one of the writings of that event, his face did shine as the sun and his raiment was as white as light, exceeding white as snow, so as no fuller on earth can white them. Now, this description suggests the OGDs, which we talked about in, I think, the mental body, and also esoteric astrology. OGDs we talked about before. This description suggests that the OGDs, the glorified person, is a very accurate picture of what happens at the time of initiation. Because just as the second initiation is connected with the development of the lower mental body, at this stage, the higher mental body or the causal body also starts to get developed. The energy starts getting more and more connected. So the incarnated soul, the personality, gets into a higher connection with the higher soul or the ego. Personality reaches up to ego. And what happens is ego reaches up to the divine spark, reaches up to what is called the monad. And therefore, the energy is transformed completely. So just as we are attempting to attain oneness with our higher soul is also attempting to attain oneness with the divine spark. And I think the divine spark is trying to attain oneness with God. So it's all a upward kind of climb. So when that energy from the divine spark comes straight in, it is transformative. And this was, I think, discussed in a previous class. How much energy? Well, if you think of your higher soul as the hand, the full hand, then we, the incarnated soul, the personality, are the fingertip. If the higher soul is the whole hand, the energy of the incarnated soul is the fingertip. Something like that. So there's a lot of energy. But if we think of the divine spark as the whole body, if you think of the divine spark as the whole body, then the higher soul is just the skin on the tip of the finger. So incarnated soul, fingertip. In comparison, higher soul is the hand. But when higher soul is just the tip of the finger, the whole body is the divine spark. So you can just imagine how much, what volume, what quantum of energy is there coming in from our spiritual source. And when that energy comes in, we are going to be transformed into brilliant, brilliant light, which is what happened in the story of Master Jesus when he underwent the transfiguration. So the higher and the lower self became one at the first initiation, and that unity is never lost. But now the development of that higher self takes place and it can move forward more and more. So the anagamin, the person who's going forward, he enjoys, while moving through the round of his daily work, all the splendid possibilities given by the full possession of the faculties of the higher mental plane. And when he leaves his physical vehicle at night, when he sleeps at night, he enters once more into the wonderfully expanded consciousness which belongs to the Buddhic plane. Now remember, all of these initiations, becoming an Arhat, a Paramhansa, the Anagamin, all of this is still possible while having a physical body. You don't need to die, leave your body behind for this progress to happen. It might take several lifetimes because the soul is constantly progressing, the body keeps changing, but the progress is continuous. Now, while in this stage, he has to remove any kind of lingering remains of what are called the fourth and fifth fetters. So remember the first three fetters, the body delusion, the body consciousness, second one being doubt, and the third one, what is the third one? The third one being the lack of discrimination and stuff. The aspirant, he must move forward and cast off the fourth and fifth fetters. Oh, sorry, third one was superstition. So you remove the body consciousness, you remove all doubt, you remove all superstition. You must then remove the kamarag and the patiha, which are the enjoyment of sensation and the possibility of anger and hatred. So not only must you remove your physical stuff, you then have to remove the emotional stuff, which is your doubt and your superstitious beliefs, prejudiced and calcified and prejudiced ideas, preconceived ideas. And from then on, all the physical sensations, touch, sensuality, food addictions, anything which is a lack of moderation, alcohol addiction, gambling, stuff like that, that must be gotten rid of. All earthly love has to be removed. And you also have to purify yourself of anger and hatred. So the aspirant must free himself from the possibility of being enslaved in any way by external things. It is not by any means that he'll not be attracted to what is pleasant or beautiful or clean, nor repelled by that which is unclean. It becomes a state of neutrality. This is dirty. Okay, it's dirty. This is beautiful. Great, it's beautiful. This is sad. Oh, that's sad. This is happy. Wow, that's happy. Neutral. Not emotionless, because he still feels. He feels to a great extent, much more than we are capable of feeling, but he's not swayed by it. He's able to retain his equanimity. He's able to retain his balance. Because he'll still take them into account during the course of his work, but he will not let that influence his decision, not let that influence his activities. Now we've come to the end of chapter 9. We will do chapter 10. It's not a very big chapter. We'll take maybe about 20 minutes or so. Now, during the stages following the first, second, and third initiations, the candidate is gradually developing the Buddhic faculty, the Buddhic consciousness. But once the candidate enters the fourth state of initiation, the nirvanic plane, from then his job is to climb steadily through that, or rather through the multiple divisions and layers through it of its various subplanes. Because this initiation number 4, is something like a midway point. And it is said, it is believed, that 7 lifetimes are consumed, are occupied normally between the first and the fourth initiations. And 7 more lifetimes are required between the fourth and the fifth ones. So 1 to 4, 7 lifetimes. Easy peasy, just 7 lifetimes, okay? But from the next one, 4 to 5, another 7 lifetimes go, because that plane of consciousness is so much more layered. The candidate who has passed through the fourth initiation is spoken of in Buddhist terminology as the Arhat, which means someone who's worthy, someone who's capable, someone who is perfect. In Oriental books, in Eastern literature, many, many beautiful things are said about him for what is the level of evolution that he's at. So if the previous one is called the Hamsa in the Hindu tradition, in this stage as the Arhat, he is the Paramhamsa, which means beyond the stage of the Hamsa. Okay, so fun fact: anytime you read the word Param in the Indian context, it means something greater than the previous level. In Christian symbology, the fourth initiation is indicated by the suffering, the crucifixion, and the resurrection of the Christ. So there are certain preliminary stages that may be taken. What you can look at, if you read basically the life of Christ, you'll be able to understand the various spiritual duties, the various spiritual evolutions that he underwent. So first he raised Lazarus from the dead. This is in the books of Christianity. Then he was commemorated on the Saturday before Palm Sunday. Then he entered Jerusalem on another Sunday. On Monday and Tuesday, he addressed the people in front of the temple. On Wednesday, he was betrayed by one of his students, Judas Iscariot. On Thursday, there was the founding of the Holy Eucharist. And on the night between Thursday and Friday, there was the trials which happened before Pontius Pilate and King Herod. And on Good Friday, he was crucified. And then Holy Saturday was spent in a state of preaching to the spirits in prison. And on Saturday, and then Sunday, Easter, Christ rose from the dead. He was able to overcome all of the physical limitations. Now, all these details of what is called the Christ drama of the life of Christ has a spiritual esoteric significance, and it's connected to what happens in the fourth initiation. This is kind of like the esoteric teachings of Christianity. So when he raised Lazarus from the dead on Saturday, it was very largely a result of a physical initiation, of physical power that he had, that he was able to demonstrate. And when this happened, when Lazarus was raised, when he brought back to life, he started getting disciples. He started gaining recognition that, oh, this is a person of great spiritual power, great spiritual achievements. So they waited for him. They waited for Lord Jesus. When he came out of his house to go to the way to Jerusalem, they gave him an ovation. They celebrated him. There was a great display of respect, of feeling, of celebration. They treated him as a person who considered to be holy. And so he was escorted by the people with great enthusiasm. Like, if I remember the stories from my childhood, he was seated on a donkey, and other people tried to make fun of him. But more other people, his followers, they celebrated him, so on and so forth. And he won that little bit of earthly recognition from physical people. And so because he received that recognition, he took that opportunity naturally to teach, to lecture. And he gave his addresses in the temple, for which many, 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 many people from far and wide came to learn from him, to listen, to grow. Now, this is symbolic of what really takes place. As a person is going up in the spiritual path, their energy is also increasing. And when they start radiating that light, they become magnetic, and they start attracting people who also want to be spiritually fed. So why do people come to certain people for teachings? Because they have that much more spiritual energy, and they're able to feed them, spiritually feeding them. That's why we go to the spiritual teacher, because the spiritual teacher feeds us, nourishes our soul. So this is a symbolic representation of what really takes place. When the person gets that amount of spiritual energy, they're able to attract students, and therefore they're able to get a certain amount of fame and recognition, which then they can use in order to spread the work even more. But then after they've gained that thing, what happens is there's a period of criticism, a period of darkness, and the world rejects him. And this is where he got betrayed by Judas Iscariot. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane when the Christ himself felt that he was completely forsaken, and he was crucified, and he was on the Christ, and he cried up to heaven. He cried up to God, saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? So someone as great as the Christ, here symbolizing the journey of the soul. When they reach a certain level, there will come a time where a huge amount of karma comes in, where all the past karmic debt is cleared off. There is a karmic download. And so once that is cleared off, it feels, or when that is happening, it feels like a period of complete darkness, that even God is not there by your side. But God is there, and we'll go into the details of it in a short span. And he's able to then move on to the next level. Now see, what happens is, it's not that he's forsaken by God. It's not that he's being judged or anything, because there's an inner meaning. And the inner meaning is, there is a particular condition called avicii. Okay? Avicii means the waveless, meaning no vibrations. Now, as a meditator, we understand that we have vibrations. We are talking. The sound energy is carried through vibrations in the air and reaching other people. Thought energy is sent off by vibrations, radiating outwards. Therefore, we can pick up thoughts and thought forms and thought entities. But there exists a particular state of spiritual growth, which is known as avicii, which is a state without any vibrations whatsoever. Now, this state of avicii is not a state of hell, it's not a state of torture, but it is a condition in which the soul, in which the disciple stands absolutely alone, cut off from all life, from all contact, even without God. Complete darkness. Imagine the worst sadness that you've ever felt, the worst depression that you've ever felt. And then imagine that that is happening to you and you don't even have God to cry out to. Nobody. Completely alone. And then you look up and wonder, God, why have you forsaken me? It is without doubt one of the ghastliest experiences that is possible for any human being to have. In fact, if we look at it again from a grosser physical world example, in prisons, the threat of solitary confinement is one of the worst. People go crazy. If you take a regular person today and say you have to spend 1 hour by yourself, no books, no internet, no mobile phone, nothing, no contact with anybody, just an empty room by yourself for 1 hour. Most people will go mad. For 1 hour in today's day, today's day and age, when we are so used to being bombarded by our senses, sensory input all the time. We are on our cell phones, we are on our laptops, we are on our devices all the time. 1 hour. Some people can say, I'll go to sleep. Okay, that's nice. That's good. You're lucky if you can do that. But they wake up and there's discomfort. Maybe you can do it for 1 hour. Can you do it for 1 day, a week, a month, eternity? So this state of avicii, according to the spiritual books, it is one of the harshest, ghastliest, torturous experiences that a human being can experience. However, it is said to last for only 1 moment. It is said to last for only 1 moment, but those who have felt, who have experienced it, it feels like an eternity, because in that state, there is no concept of space or time. There is literally no vibration, nothing, pure nothing, not even the presence of God. Now, why do they have to go through this? Because it's a test. It has 2 objectives. The first one is so that the candidate, the spiritual candidate, develops a sense of compassion for those who will eventually experience avicii as a result of their bad karma, as a result of their negative actions. So there are people who do evil. They may not get the result of it in this lifetime, but maybe some lifetimes later, because of the amount of negativity they've poured into the world, their soul will have to experience this solitary confinement for a very long time. For a person who's undergoing crucifixion, spiritual crucifixion, and they're working out their karma, one of the final tests that they have to go through is the state of avicii, where they will face this torture situation for a moment so that they develop compassion and sympathy for other people also who will be experiencing this, will be experiencing this state of utter loneliness, utter cutting off. Sometimes in spiritual books, we read about a lost soul, okay? Bad incarnation, spiritual bankruptcy, lost soul. What does a lost soul do? It doesn't go through life again. They are without any vibration, the state of avicii, okay? So when the candidate is able to experience the state of avicii, he develops the ability to fully sympathize with those to whom avicii comes as a result of their actions. That's number 1. Number 2, he should be able to learn to stand absolutely apart from anything which is external. Because he has been through a state where there's nothing there, he is able to then become self-sufficient, self-fulfilled, triumphant in his utter certainty that he is one with God all the time. That the illusion of separation, physically there's the illusion of separation, and he realizes it's all just an illusion. And therefore his connection with God becomes very, very, very strong. Now, some people fail this test, they collapse. because they cannot handle it. And so then they have to go back at a lower level and climb up again and again and again until they reach the stage where they have to take the test again. But a person who can actually stand firm through this nightmare, through this terrible test, for them, it is a tremendous amount, a tremendous achievement, because then they have an answer to the question, why has you forsaken me? Why hast thou forsaken me? And there's a second line to this by, I think, Madame Blavatsky, where he said, why dost thou glorify me so? Or how have you glorified me this amazing way? Because then the soul, having been separated from God for that moment, comes back into the glory of God and says, okay, you know what? I've been through literally the worst. I can face anything, and I can help other people face anything as well. And therefore, he is literally in the presence of God all the time. Now, this initiation, this fourth initiation, differs from all the others because it has the strange double effect of both suffering and victory. Now, each of the early initiations was symbolized in the Christian system by one definite fact. You had the birth of Christ, you had the baptism of Christ, you had the transfiguration. Okay, so physical, baptism being emotional, transfiguration being mental, right? But in order to, okay, so just a quick separation over here. Birth, of course, is physical. Anytime you see anything connected with water in symbolism, it usually means the astral or emotional side of things. So, you know, what happens in baptism, you know, the holy water is sprinkled and all that stuff. That's the emotional development taking place. In your dreams, if you see stuff connected to a lot of water, it usually symbolizes something emotional, okay? Anything connected usually with fire or air would symbolize, or light would symbolize the mind. So if you look at this particular set of symbolism, the birth is physical, baptism is emotional, connected with water, and transfiguration connected with light, hence the mind or the development of the mental faculty, okay? But in order to represent the fourth initiation, a series of events was necessary. So first was the crucifixion and all the other sufferings which it brought along with it, which then took care of the one side of his incarnation. He was killed, he died. He died in the physical sense. Spiritually, he was reborn, which represents the resurrection, triumph on the other side, immortalized. Always at this stage, there will be suffering. We all have to go through it. There'll be physical suffering, astral suffering, mental suffering. And of course, the world will criticize us, will condemn us, because they'll think that, oh, you did all of this work and now look, you've fallen. But there is a tremendous amount of growth which happens once we overcome that on the higher planes. The physical world might not know it. We will still be criticized by our relatives, by people who don't understand. But spiritually, we now understand that yes, we are growing. There's progress. This peculiar type of suffering, which invariably accompanies this initiation, clears off any backlog, any arrears of karma, which may still stand in our way. The patience and joyousness with which we endure them has the great value of strengthening the character, which will help to determine the exact way in which they can progress. And there's an old saying, an old proverb which says, no cross, no crown. This may be taken to mean that without a person's descent into matter, his binding on the cross of matter, or the books, it would be impossible for him to gain the resurrection and receive the crown of glory. But it's only through the limitation, through sorrow, through suffering, that this victory is possible. Now, we've all been through sufferings in life. Chances are we've come onto the spiritual path because of some source of great pain, whether in our personal lives or the lives of our loved ones, which pushed us onto this path. And we can all say, with some conviction and certainty, that it's because we went through that suffering, today we're in a better place because of it. So now comes what is the job or the work of the Arhat. The work of the Arhat is the development of his consciousness in the physical plane, in the Buddhic plane, while he is still physically alive. And when he goes to sleep in a state of trance or meditation, he enters a state of nirvana, which is one state above the Buddhic plane. So when he is initiated, he must have that glimpse of nirvanic consciousness. Just as the first initiation, there must be a moment experience of the Buddhic. So basically, every time you enter the next level, you're shown what the level beyond also is supposed to be. And then you're supposed to work towards attaining that. It's like you go into the first grade and you see what people in the second grade and third grade are like. Then you enter the fifth grade and you're shown what it's like in the 10th grade, all the studies you have to do. You enter 10th grade and they start telling you about the higher secondary school. You finish that and then tell you about college. You finish that and they tell you about life and all of that. So basically there's always an upward and forward motion going on. That's a task which is difficult. It's a task which is not easy, but we will gradually find ourselves, the disciple will be able to find himself able to move up to that level of spirituality, that level of evolution. Okay. And there's a nice description which is given there that European Orientalists have described nirvana as annihilation. The breath is blown out. Now, it doesn't actually mean annihilation. It means a complete sense of oneness. There is no separation anymore. That which makes you, you, and him, and her, and me is not there, because now we are more connected than ever. So the visual that's been given over here, try to imagine the whole universe filled with and consisting of an immense amount of living light. And this light is always moving onwards, moving forward, okay? There's no up or down. It's just constantly expanding in all directions. It's like a vast sea of light. And this light has a purpose, and it moves through without any strain, without any effort. And it's just brilliant, dazzling white light. And gradually we begin to realize that even in this dazzling brightness, there are certain bright spots, like a nucleus or a nuclei. And in these bright spots, the light has a new quality which enables it to become perceptible on the lower planes. So there's light everywhere, but sometimes there's a little bit more light. And in those areas of more light, people in the lower physical worlds, in the worlds lower than the physical world also, they're able to experience the light as well. And then as we spend more time in the light, we are gradually able to comprehend that these beams of light, these circles and concentrations of light, these are also like suns, like actual solar systems or suns. These are the great ones, the planetary spirits, great angels, archangels, lords of karma, Chohans and Dhyan Chohans, Buddhas in plural, Christs in plural, masters, of course, in plural, and many, many, many other spiritual beings whose name we can't even know. And we see that their job is to just keep on radiating this light onto the lower planes. And little by little, as we become more accustomed to this amazing reality, we begin to perceive that we are connected to them. We are one with them. Now, even though we are way below their level of achievement, we're still part of that one group. It's kind of like being in a WhatsApp chat where only a few people are talking and sharing their knowledge and other people are just like quiet but watching. So we are like those people who are quiet in the group, in the chat, watching. Wow, you know so much. You're so much. Of course, it's a silly example, but I guess it serves to illustrate it. And that energy is always flowing, and we are a part of it, understanding it, being a part of it. So there's one story of the author. He saw Master Kutumi, Master KH, connect to the nirvanic plane and bring that energy down. And so my remembrance is, I'm quoting from the book, he looked as I had never seen him before. He was always radiant, supremely radiant, but now he was more than radiant. And I can't find a word down here to describe him in the glory which I perceived him in the first flash of nirvanic consciousness. Majestic and radiant are poor words. Blinding perhaps expresses it better. For just a moment, I was completely overwhelmed. I almost wanted to veil my face from the sight of him, and yet I couldn't keep my eyes away from him because he was so unfathomably splendid, only a little less glorious than the king. And afterwards, I realized that at the time, I could not conceive of any greater glory. So basically, he saw the divinity. You can read, it's a much, much longer passage in the book. It suffices to say that the holy masters, us, when we reach that level and we're able to bring in that level of nirvanic energy also, it becomes blinding lights. So what is the work that the Arhat has to do? Once we have access to that light and we bring that light into our system, the work that the Arhat has to do is to climb the topmost heights of utmost human planes of existence. And when he is doing so, he must remove the last 5 of the 10 great fetters. So the first 3 we spoke about, which are connected to the physical and emotional stuff, right? I'm not the body, the physical delusions, no, lack of discrimination, and no superstition. And the next one was remove all sensory and sensual pleasures, and to remove any passions like anger and irritation. Now come the last 5, Rupa Raga, which is the desire of beauty, wanting beautiful things, even wanting to be in heaven. The desire to be in heaven is also something which he must get rid of. He must also remove the desire for not having any desire. You'll have some people who will go and say, I'm a very spiritual person, not religious, but I'm very, very spiritual. I'm a super spiritual person. That is also not desirable. Why? Because number 8, it's a form of pride, man. So remove the desire for beautiful things, remove the desire for not wanting desire also. Contradictory, but think about it. Number 8, pride. Next is the agitation, to get irritable, to get moved into doing certain things. This is different from the upset and anger of the physical and emotional types. This is the mental irritation, the spiritual irritation, like, oh, why are people like this? Why are you like this? Why are you like that? Ugh, that sense of superiority that comes in, that you guys are still so caught up in the physical world and physical things. That attitude. So it has to have a change in attitude. The possibility of being disturbed by anything is 9th of the 10 great things which hold us back. And the last thing which holds us back is avidya, or ignorance. So what are they? Desire for beauty or beautiful things, a lack of desire, like desiring no desire, that, pride, the possibility of being disturbed, and ignorance. So these are the 10 great fetters which hold us back. We spoke about this, I think, in the mental body and the causal body when we were studying that. These are the 10 things which hold people back. Now, the 6th and 7th fetters include not only the idea of rage or attraction, but also that of dvesha or repulsion. So raga, not rage, raga and repulsion. And casting off of these fetters implies a quality of character such that nothing in the lower planes of form or the higher and formless planes can hold them back. Basically, nothing should disturb his balance. Something's beautiful, okay, great. Something's ugly, okay, great. Undisturbed, unbalanced, no. Complete moderation. As the 8th fetter, the fetter number 8, man, is filed away, he forgets the greatness of his own achievements, and pride becomes impossible for him, since now he always stands in the light and measures himself against nothing else. With this comes the perfect serenity which nothing can disturb, leaving this disciple free to acquire all knowledge and to become practically omniscient as far as planet Earth is concerned. So remove the ideas of attraction, remove the ideas of repulsion, remove all forms of pride, and look forward to growth and expansion of knowledge, expansion of consciousness. So now the candidate reaches the 5th initiation, that of the adept. He now takes the final step that makes him Superman, or a Shekha, as the Buddhists call him, because he has nothing else left to learn. He has exhausted all the possibilities of the human kingdom of nature. And that's when he becomes a liberated being. Jivan Mukta, Jivan meaning life, Mukta meaning free, which means a free being, not free just because of separate independence, but because his will, his purpose is aligned with the will of the universe, not just with his higher soul, not just with the divine spark, but that of God, God realization. He stands in the light of nirvana, even when he's physically awake. In Christian symbolism, the ascension and the descent of the Holy Ghost stands for the attainment of adeptship, for the adept does ascend clear and above humanity beyond this earth, and even if he so chooses, like Christ chose, to come back to teach and to help. As he ascends, he becomes one with the Holy Spirit, and invariably the first thing he does with his new power is to share it with his disciples, pour it upon the disciples, just as Lord Christ poured down tongues of fire on the heads of his followers at the Feast of Pentecost. Again, you see the symbolism: fire here, knowledge, light, mental growth. Above the initiation of the adept lies that of the Chohan, and further on still others, which we'll talk about in the next chapters. This ladder extends higher and higher, farther and further, beyond stuff which we can actually know. And when the human kingdom is fully completed, fully traversed, and man stands on the threshold of the superhuman life as a liberated spirit, 7 paths open up in front of him. He may dissolve himself into omniscience and omnipotence of nirvana with activities which are far beyond our knowledge, to become an avatar, to become a living representation of the divine. Now, the person who takes the role of the avatar of the Dharmakaya, he becomes one with the divine spark completely. He drops any personality. Nothing is personal anymore. He becomes a representation of the Holy Trinity: divine light, divine love, and divine power. He keeps his link with the physical world. He keeps his, the spiritual atoms which are there, again, achieving oneness with the higher soul. He can create physical bodies, emotional bodies, astral bodies, mental bodies as required, but he does so as the role of the avatar. This Nirmanakaya, okay, as someone who creates his body of his own free will, is spoken of in the voice of silence as a guardian, as a wall, who preserves the wall from greater misery and sorrow. So they have already undergone so much suffering, so much stuff. They're able to take this entire suffering, put it beneath them, remove them, and radiate so much light, so much compassion, that the suffering of those on the physical world is reduced. For those who don't understand the inner meaning, it seems to imply that misery and sorrow comes to the world from outside, from external things, and that these great beings are some sort of a magic wall of protection. But that's not the truth of it, because all the trouble in the world comes from inside. We create our own troubles. We create our own karmic conditions, our own suffering. Okay. In fact, we'll be talking, I think, next Tuesday on something to do with suffering and how to overcome it. Each man is his own lawgiver. We create our own karmic conditions, our own punishments, our own failures, our own rewards and riches. The job of the Nirmanakaya, the job of this great being now, is to supply a great store of spiritual force for helping everyone. And they're generating this force all the time. They don't take it themselves. They don't use it for themselves. They take all of the force and they put it out there for the service of all of creation, for reducing the burden of the world. This brings us to an end of chapter 10. Part 4 is also completed. Then we will come on to the next one, which is the work of the masters, which we'll collect for next time. And we have a question: what is Christ? Okay, Christ, Krishna, these are states of consciousness, as per my understanding. I could be wrong, but based on whatever I've read so far, I understand that Christ is a state of consciousness. So if you look at Master Jesus, his name is not Jesus Christ, he's Jesus the Christ. If you look at some of the old scriptural teachings, because his body was being prepared for the Christ consciousness to come into him. So just as we have a Christ for earth, there would be a Lord Christ for various other planes of existence, various other planets which are undergoing their own levels of evolution. So there'll be multiple Christs, multiple Buddhas, multiple avatars, and so on. So if you look at the Chohan or the Manu, it's like a level. It's like an office. The Christ is a office. It's a state of consciousness of a much elevated nature, which we have to work towards. The Christ consciousness is also known as the Krishna consciousness, which is the consciousness which is coming from divine love and is all pervasive and keeps humanity going. Right. I hope that answers the question. If there are no further questions or anything else, we shall now end the session. We'll have 2 more sessions to go. Today being, we'll have 2 more sessions right before Vesak. Please do join us for the next ones. There'll be a gap after that, and then we'll start another book from the month of, I think, probably June. 2 more sessions to go. So let's join together to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chokoksri, Lord Mahaguruji, mailing to all the great ones. the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, beings of light, to the angels of theosophy and angels of light, angels of wisdom. Thank you for your priceless blessings of light, love, and power, healing, guidance, and protection, for abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to gather together as a group, to use this knowledge to become a better instrument of service for alleviating the sufferings of humanity and all those we share our space on earth with, to become a better person and a better soul. We thank you in full faith. Take a deep breath, absorb the healing, absorb the teachings, absorb the energy, and exhale and relax. Atma Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. See you for the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.